Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This episode, we'll be talking Champions League recap, the EPL title race heating up, Club World Cup history, the Marsch saga, surgery, Huck Finn, Pulisic, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Wednesday, February 14th? In the year 2023.
I am doing well, and we are back on track as far as our studio.
We are. We, as we mentioned on Monday on the show, we had some technical difficulties, little glitches and shocks to the system, but we have recovered. We have wonderful men and women behind the scenes that came in and got it all sorted out. So the optics are back. Everything is good. We got the everything flying. If you're watching, you can see. If you're just listening as normal, nothing's really changed for you. But we got the whole shebang going on. Yeah, did you watch anything or read anything or see anything out there?
I am off and running on my Mossad book. I've read the first 60 pages.
I too am doing a whole lot more book type of reading and that kind of stuff. So there was this moment during the pandemic where everybody thought they were just going to get to the joke was we're going to get to the bottom of Netflix. I'm struggling, Mosse, to find stuff right now, and I'm paying probably more than I was before. I mean, they got me the whole, the bundling and the cord cutting and stuff like that. It was all a bunch of crap, like I said. So I'm paying a whole lot. I got all these different platforms. Bruce Springsteen had a song years ago. It was like 57 channels and nothing on, or something like that. I think it was 57. But he was right in the moment, and he's right evergreen, because there's all of these platforms that I have that I pay for, and I can't find anything now to watch that's interesting. So I'm probably going to need some suggestions from the folks out there. If you got them, please send them through. You can obviously hit us up on Twitter or the State of the Union podcast hotline. Again, that's 657-549-2297 if you want to tell us that. And we got some questions coming in later on. But books, you mentioned books. So now I got all sorts of stuff that I got flying in. Let me make sure I got all these. So I mentioned I'm doing the classics. So I've moved on now to Huck Finn after Grapes of Wrath and the Gatsby stuff. So Huck Finn, let's see, the Moby Dick. I'm struggling, Moby Dick, Mosse. I'm struggling. It's just, it doesn't hit the way that I thought it was going to, and especially for a classic. And I read it years and years ago, but maybe I'll get into it and maybe it will help. And then some more contemporary stuff, Rise and Fall, the story of 9/11. I can't get enough of the 9/11 stuff. And I remind myself to read something, whether it's a book or whether it's an article or to watch a documentary periodically, just to make sure that, just like I said, to remind myself and to obviously never forget that. Again, it always makes me sad. It always makes me angry, but I think it's also useful as we get further and further away in a whole generation that wasn't even alive and doesn't see it the same way that my generation does. And then a book called Woke Inc. by a guy named, what's his name? Vivek Ramaswamy. He's actually considering a run for the presidency on the Republican ticket. I was just reading an article about that. So that's those are the things that I'm reading right now. But from a watching perspective, nothing. It's scorched earth out there, my friend.
Well, we've got Ted Lasso and Succession back next month.
I saw the Ted Lasso. The third season is upon us, and evidently this is going to be the last season.
They're
just gonna walk away. That's it. Yeah. Drop the mic and head off.
One last thing before we begin. I notice you are ignoring your critics and unbuttoning.
I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah.
So somebody on Twitter, which we know has their finger on the pulse of human beings out there, and is obviously very, very important in this world, decided to send me a tweet, and I get criticism. That's kind of part and parcel every single day. But this one was about the plunging of my V here and the amount of chest that I was showing. Okay, and you can see all three of my hairs on my chest if I pull it down a little bit like that. Mosse, I think I've talked about this before. My favorite Aesop's fable is the one about the father, the son, and the ass or the donkey. Basically, to paraphrase, what ends up happening? They go to market, and a lot of things happen. But the moral of the story is, if you try to please everybody, you please nobody. And so this is it, my friend. This, by the way, you're welcome. All right, that you get this view, whether it's you out there or you across from me here. I'm not changing for you or anybody. This is how I roll, and I roll deep. Okay, I roll deep when it comes to the plunging neckline and the V. I always have, and I always will. I'm not changing for everybody on this show or anywhere else. So yeah, screw him.
Are you ready to light this candle?
Yes, let's light this candle. What are we talking about today, Mosse?
The UEFA Champions League knockout stage is off and running. We had the first 4 round of 16 first legs this week. We'll go in chronological order.
Okay.
On Tuesday, PSG Bayern.
Before we get started, this has been a long time. When it came on, when you hear the music and you get excited, I mean, I know, we had World Cup and all that kind of stuff, but it just feels like it's been forever since we had it. So I'm glad that it's back. I'm excited that it's back, and I didn't think that I missed it as much as I did.
I mentioned on our last podcast that PSG Bayern was a rematch of the 2020 Champions League final, which Bayern won 1-0 thanks to a second-half goal by Kingsley Coman, and lo and behold, Bayern win this first leg 1-0 on a second-half goal by Kingsley Coman, assisted by Alphonso Davies, who came on for João Cancelo at the half. A shot that Donnarumma probably should have saved, was kind of a soft goal to give up. Mbappe did not start this game, came on in the second half. Before he came on, PSG were absolutely shocking. Bayern were all over them. Neymar was atrocious, one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. Messi was not great either. So Bayern certainly deserved to be ahead at that point. Once PSG brought Mbappe on, he changed the game. PSG finished the match on the front foot, created some chances. Mbappe thought he had scored an equalizer, but it was chalked off because of an offside to Nuno Mendes in the build-up. So it ends PSG 0, Bayern 1, Bayern in the driver's seat to advance.
Are they? I mean, look, I know that the tendency is to get greedy. And we mentioned earlier this week in looking at this game that this was a gift and an opportunity to Bayern to come up to this depleted PSG team. And, that's one thing to say that they're depleted, but it's still one of the great teams in the world, and they put out plenty of talent, but they were not even competitive in the first half. And Bayern should have put them away. They had not only the opportunities, but so much of the ball, and Bayern pressed them into their own end from the very beginning, and PSG still wanted to play out of the back, and they lost the ball time and time again. So in a strange way, if you're Bayern Munich, the damage that you needed to be done in that first half. Because to your point, that second half, it was completely different, and I think it showed why, and I know it's arguable, but Mbappe is the best player on the planet. And it's not just because he's fast, okay? And just because he's faster than anybody on the field. It's because he is able to harness it, and he is able to understand when to use it, when not to use it, to gear down, to gear up, do all of those different things. But one person fundamentally changed the entire complexion of that game and of the team that he was playing for, and that was Mbappe. If they get him and Mbappe going back to Munich, Munich is in trouble. I don't think they did enough damage this game to really be secure in that second leg. Now, it's a big if, and God forbid that not only Mbappe is on the field, but Neymar gets his you-know-what out of his you-know-what, and Messi comes alive, which all could happen, and it could be big problems for Bayern.
Shout out to Sergio Ramos, who said after the game, thankfully for us, the away goals rule is no longer in effect. Sergio, Bayern won 1-0. There's no way for them to advance on away goals. PSG could have. The team that benefits from the away goals rule no longer being in effect is actually Bayern Munich. So Sergio struggling with the math a little bit there.
How dare you? How dare you?
But a couple of notes. First on Bayern, Jamal Musiala, what a player he is. I think he is underrated because he's already at a destination club, so he's not the subject of transfer rumors as much as some of these other guys. If he was the exact same player he is but played for a Dortmund or a Leipzig, you'd be reading stories every day about the Chelseas and Manchester Uniteds thinking of spending 100 million euros for him, but you don't read those stories because nobody thinks he's going to leave Bayern anytime soon. So we sort of take for granted how brilliant he is that a kid at that age is doing what he's doing. But I thought he ran the game for them. I mean, he was one of the best players on the field for sure.
It's wonderful. But, to your point, when you have a player that is already in, arguably the greatest club in the world, and certainly one of the greatest clubs with this incredible history, how much ambition do they have to go other places? And should they even go anywhere else? Because even at Bayern, there will be people will come knocking, and there will be enticements out there, and there also will be some that say if he just continues on and plays for Bayern the rest of his career, wins God knows how many Bundesliga titles, and then the sporadic Champions League or whatever, playing for one of the great teams in the world, there will still be some that will say, but. I guess it's down to the individual, and we won't know, but it's fun to watch him, whether he's playing for Bayern or if he goes on and plays for somebody else. And also, let's be honest, there's only a few other places if you're coming from Bayern that you could conceivably go where it is at step up.
On Messi, right after the World Cup, PSG approached him about signing an extension. And in that moment, he was very happy. His family is settled in Paris, and so he indicated that he was willing to do it. But he hasn't put pen to paper yet. And I wonder, now we're reaching the part of the season where it tends to become toxic at PSG after they invariably get knocked out of the Champions League. The fans turn on the players and boo them. And I wonder if he'll rethink, do I really want to sign up for this for another year? So,
this is the season of toxicity when it comes to PSG. All right. Well, we'll see. So, it shapes up for a wonderful return there, and we'll see ultimately what happens. All right. What's next?
Also on Tuesday, AC Milan 1-0 winners over Tottenham. Brahim Diaz with the only goal early in the first half. They kept Tottenham at bay the rest of the game. And in fact, Milan had a couple of chances in the second half to add to their lead. A couple of headers with Ketlar and then Messias.
But so did Spurs.
They did, but I kind of think AC Milan is a team that's ruining a little bit, only winning 1-0. Why, did you see it differently?
You mean because they missed their chances? Yeah, no, I don't look at it going back in. Yeah, no, because but Spurs still had opportunity, and I think Spurs will be confident going back, because this is not the Milan of the past. But who knows? Maybe they conjure up something incredible. But it was kind of cool and fun to see at least a shade of old Milan there in terms of the celebration, and it's much more, I guess, of the possibility of what could be relative to what once was. But I don't know how long that lasts ultimately. And Spurs, it's a good team, and now they got to go to London.
On Wednesday, Benfica took care of Club Brugge, 2-0 away win. João Mário from the penalty spot, and David Neres late. So I think this tie is done and dusted. Benfica should move on. Also on Wednesday, Dortmund 1-0 victory at home over Chelsea. The goal, just a remarkable sequence. A corner for Chelsea. It gets cleared out to Karim Adeyemi in his own half, and he takes off on this spectacular run, blows right past Enzo Fernandez, rounds Kepa, and slots home. Just an incredible moment. Gio Reyna, an unused substitute in this one, incidentally. Dortmund get the victory, but Chelsea had their chances. João Felix hit the crossbar in the first half. Koulibaly thought he had scored in the second half. Emre Can cleared it off the line. So I think Chelsea come away from this one still feeling like they're very much in it and have a great chance back home at Stamford.
Yeah, I think Dortmund will be worried about the return.
This was smash and grabby on Dortmund's part. I don't know that they were.
It was, but it was still a beautiful moment. And we talk about, again, back to speed, and speed in most sports kind of trumps all. But there's a lot of players that have speed but don't have necessarily the skill or the pacing to be able to use it effectively, and in this moment, and it was coast to coast, as you said, off of a corner down at the other end, and then just get on your horse and go. And it was pretty incredible to watch. And we've seen coast to coast types of things here, but this was fun to see. And we talk about speed needing space. Sometimes in the game, in those set pieces, when you have all of the focus and all the tension, you can let stuff slip. And any coach will tell you on a set piece, you have to be saying, what if that ball comes out? Do we have enough players to stop that? In that moment, do you have the wherewithal to take a professional foul? Do you have the wherewithal to understand that it cannot go on because of ultimately what we saw happen there? But I don't think Chelsea right now will be worried necessarily on the goal that they gave up in the way that they gave up because of the chances that they got and the ability to go back home.
Christian Pulisic did not play in this match due to injury. João Felix did. As I mentioned, he hit the crossbar. Those two players linked right now in transfer news. We talked about this on our last podcast. João Felix, it's a loan with no option to buy, but Chelsea are going to try to buy him permanently, it sounds like, in the summer. You suggested that might be the case. Atletico Madrid right now are asking for around 140 million euros. Chelsea don't want to go that high. All they want to spend is 100 million. So you think, well, how do they make up that difference? There are now stories that Christian Pulisic might be thrown into that deal. It might be 100 million euros and Pulisic in exchange for João Felix. What do you think? I think we all feel like Pulisic does need to leave Chelsea in the summer. We tend to look at it in terms of the Premier League. I've even heard Serie A, but this is the first time I've heard La Liga, Atletico Madrid. How does that hit you?
Well, first thing, the structure of this deal. I mean, it's interesting that it involves an American, and it's a very American type of thing to actually trade players, right? You're actually trading players and assigning them value through this deal. Usually, it doesn't really happen like that, and you definitely need the agreement of the players in order to do something like this. I think Christian Pulisic, from the outside, it looks like he's come to the realization that with all of the talent that's coming in, that this has run its course at Chelsea. I think what he needs to decide is he comfortable enough in the EPL where that's where he wants to stay, or does he want to go someplace like you said here, to go to La Liga, and you're not going to the elites, and you're going to a club that is notorious for, defending and kind of a raw type of play. We've seen, the likes of Griezmann and obviously who he's getting potentially traded here for. It might not be. I have a hard time seeing that as a destination where the best of Christian Pulisic will be used. I don't know. Is it just me?
Well, the interesting thing from the Atletico Madrid point of view is there are rumblings that this might be Simeone's final season. And that's why they loaned João Felix rather than sold him, because they want to wait it out, see if Simeone leaves. And they just felt like those two needed to get away from each other for a few months. But it might be that you bring in a different manager in the summer, and then it makes sense to bring João Felix back. So that has Pulisic implications too, who the manager is. So I think we have to wait and see the Atletico Madrid managerial situation. Then we might look upon an attacking player playing there differently than we do now under Simeone.
The style in general, I know it's a generalization, but the style in general in Spain, in La Liga, I actually do think that could be conducive to a player like Christian Pulisic. And I know it's kind of stereotypical, but I think a smaller type of player, a player who certainly can handle the physical nature of the game, but doesn't go looking for it, and from a technical perspective can do some wonderful things in small spaces. Obviously, is incredibly quick off the dribble. Who knows? That might actually work out for him. But again, to your point, if Simeone is still there, I mean, can you imagine Christian Pulisic getting screamed and yelled at by Simeone? It should be interesting. Who knows? Strange bedfellows. Who knows?
Another American in the news. It turns out Jesse Marsch will not be making a swift return to the Premier League. This looked to be a done deal that he was going to take over Southampton, but now talks have collapsed. The issue is the length of the contract. Southampton wanted it to be a deal just through the end of the season with an option to extend. We'll see what happens. If you can keep us up, then we'll go from there. And Jesse wanted a longer-term commitment, and so he is not going to accept the job. Seeing the reaction, there's a type of person out there that feels like, how could an American ever turn down a Premier League job if it's offered to him? And then there are others that do recognize that he might have been set up to fail here, and so this is actually the prudent move on Jesse's part.
Yeah, I mean, that he's American, maybe he looked at it and said, if I wasn't American, and again, I'm just saying the way that I think minds work here. And he might say, if I was an American here, that this is a no-win type of situation. Well, there's a win if you keep them up, but the chances of you keeping them up are still slim right now. If you do, you're a hero, and it's wonderful. But if you don't, for Jesse, that would be 2 relegations within 1 year, basically, or potentially. And that goes on your CV, and a third failure kind of in a row. Whether that's fair or not, that's, I think, how it would be looked at, in particular because he is an American. Having said that, I don't know. I mean, he might, and look, Jesse's not going to want for a job. I think that there are teams around the world, and obviously back home if that's something that he wants to do, but even internationally out there, that will look at him as a viable option. So I'm not worried about him being employed. And I understand if he's going to do something, he wants some sort of security. But there's almost a part of me too that kind of wants to see him in this mercenary, swashbuckling role of just going in and recognizing if it's kind of all or nothing. And if it goes great, wonderful. He's, like I said, a legend and a king in that moment, and continues on. And if it doesn't, all right, fine. You take your hits and the slings and arrows that are going to come. But maybe he is worried about how ultimately it looks on his resume.
What we don't know is what other options he has. There
Right.
might be other clubs contacting him and letting him know, hey, in the summer, we're probably going to come calling. And so he has to weigh that versus taking over Southampton now.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And, the U.S. national team is still out there, although I don't know who ultimately would be calling him, because Ernie is lame duck here, and ultimately whoever's taking, I'm talking about Ernie Stewart, who is moving on. He's there for a few more weeks now. But I mean, unless he has somebody in his ear saying, hey, this is going to get done, we just have to get through a certain period. But I don't think that's necessarily.
Although it is revealing that it sounds like had Southampton offered him a multi-year deal, he would have taken it.
Yep.
So
I do think he likes the day-to-day type of existence. And that's not that he wouldn't enjoy or thrive being an international coach, or he said that would be incredibly proud, and for any American coach, I think it would be. But it also takes away that day-to-day type of existence that a lot of coaches thrive on.
On Monday's pod, I mentioned that as soon as we were done taping, I would be covering the CONCACAF Under-17 Championship, the United States taking on Trinidad and Tobago. The U.S. won that match 3-1. You were texting me during it, so you watched it. Did you glean anything from that performance?
No. I mean, no, because the competition wasn't great. And I have been around for a while. I have seen and watched our youth national teams where they look great and they're pinging it around, and there's obviously a identity in how they want to play, and that's a good thing. I'd rather have that than nothing. But I've also been burned before, whether it's a false sense of security relative to the quality or the lack of quality that they are playing, or it's a false sense of security because of the age. And the great equalizer, when some of these kids grow up, get bigger, get smaller, go through puberty or more puberty, and things change dramatically.
That's 2 wins out of 2 for the U.S. They've already clinched the spot in the round of 16. We're taping this on Wednesday afternoon. Tonight they face Canada for first place in the group. If the U.S. were to win this match and top the group, I believe they would face the Dominican Republic in the round of 16. Remember, the top 4, so the 4 semifinalists qualify for the Under-17 World Cup in Peru later this year.
So far, so good.
Yep. And then one last reminder, we talked about this on our last pod, but the SheBelieves Cup gets underway this week. Thursday night, U.S.-Canada at Exploria Stadium in Orlando.
Unlike the Under-17 game against Canada, that will feature the U.S. playing a Canadian team that is being forced to play and is doing it under protest, right? Okay.
Correct.
Just checking. But that'll be fun. We'll watch all of those things. And like you said, by the time you listen to the U.S. from an Under-17 perspective should have beaten Canada, and then later on, the U.S. women should take care of Canada. And I don't want any excuses. All right, when we kick Canada's ass here in the SheBelieves Cup about the problems that Canada's having off the field. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at some more games that happened, and I'll look forward to the weekend to games that are going to happen. All right, welcome back. All right, Mosse, we got some games that also happened, and some league games that happened here. Where should we start?
We'll begin in England, where today, right before we got here to tape this podcast, showdown, top of the table clash, Arsenal, Manchester City. City take it 3-1 at the Emirates.
Ooh.
They took the lead through Kevin De Bruyne, who capitalized on a giveaway by Tomiyasu. who got the start over Ben White, which was a curious decision by Arteta. Arsenal equalized late in the first half from the penalty spot. I thought a stone-cold penalty. The NBC guys made much too much of that being a controversial decision.
I am 100% with you there, Mosse. And I am so glad that that penalty was called, because the carte blanche that goalkeepers have been given historically, all right, because the shot happened, or because the ball went beyond or out of bounds. Evidently, we've come to the point where goalkeepers can basically decapitate an attacking player, all right, and not even come anywhere close to the ball in a situation that anywhere else in the field would be not just automatic expulsion, you'd be exiled from the actual country that you're playing in. Some of these horrific timed tackles. And so when Ederson comes out and doesn't even come anywhere close to the ball, I am so glad that they went back and looked at it and said, no, we're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt because the ball, you got the shot off and it got cleared off the line. No, it's a foul. It's a penalty. And anybody that says that it isn't doesn't know what the hell they're talking about.
This argument of where's Ederson supposed to go? Well, he could have stayed at his goal line. The fact that he came out like that makes that argument ridiculous. He was completely away from his goal.
Have a center back. Put a center back in Ederson's role at midfield, okay? And have a player push it by him. Where is he supposed to go? He just crushed him. He just completely crushed him and didn't come anywhere close to the ball and impeded him from actually getting to the ball on the other side. Ugh.
And Ederson was nice enough to tell Saka where he should go with the penalty.
Yes, so. That was very nice. So now it's 1-1. You think, all right, game on. Arteta's going crazy. The Emirates, everybody's going nuts. Piers Morgan's talking crap. It's all happening now, Mosse.
But then second half, bad giveaway by Gabriel, City break, Jack Grealish 2-1, and then late on, a beautiful team move that ends with De Bruyne squaring it for Haaland, who scores his 26th Premier League goal of the campaign. 3-1 final. The amazing thing about this game for me is that City weren't even that good. The first half, they were dreadful. The Bernardo Silva left-back experiment, which worked against Aston Villa, was no bueno here. It was actually ridiculous because Arsenal's best player is Bukayo Saka, so that's the one area where you can't screw around too much with his left back, and Pep decided to get cute there. But when he fixed that early in the second half, brought on Akanji, things improved.
It must be nice to be Pep, right? It's going to be the king, right? It must be incredible to be able to do something just to try it for shits and giggles, right? And just, you have so much talent out there. And even the player that you're putting in a position that he has no business being in still kind of fakes it here or there. And then you can actually move things around. And then you get credit for recognizing what was always going to be a problem. And then you fix it, and then your team goes on and wins. Before we go on, when I am watching Manchester City now, when they win, is it because of ill-gotten gains, given the charges against them right now, and all of the accusations yet completely proven, and they have the right to defend themselves. But ultimately, if and when they are successful, if they did what they are being accused of, cheat, then all of this means nothing, right?
There is a dark cloud hanging over that club right now. I did think about that as I was watching this match.
I did too. Okay. Yeah. And then the other thing, and this is what, did you see when De Bruyne went over to the sideline and Arteta was there, and Arteta pushed the ball away?
Yep.
Don't do that. Don't be an ass like that.
Arteta,
yes. Wonderful hair, Arteta. All right? Wonderful coach. I love him. But you know well, here's what you do. If you do it, then don't be surprised when somebody pushes you out of the way and you get crap for it, all right? Don't be surprised if you're irritating a player. You know exactly what you're doing. Oh, and by the way, you're a coach, all right? You shouldn't be doing that. And especially Arteta, who kind of holds himself above. Pep does this too, so he's not alone. They all hold themselves above and wouldn't be caught dead doing this or that. I mean, these are like dark art sideline versions of doing that kind of stuff. Come on.
And Arteta, former assistant at City, knows De Bruyne well. At the end of the game, I saw they did have a warm embrace, smile, so they made peace.
It's fun. And it's it's basically just poking, and you know exactly what you're doing. And from a player perspective, it's the worst. It's so irritating when somebody does that. You're just about to pick it up, and they just kick it a little bit farther, and they know exactly what they're doing. And you kind of expect it from players, but you don't expect it from coaches. And every time I see it, it's like, that's beneath you. It's not beneath all coaches, but that's beneath you, Arteta. So don't do that.
So those two teams level on points, City ahead on goal difference. Arsenal have played one fewer game, but I'd be very surprised if Arsenal make this a nip and tuck race until the end. I think City blow past them now and win the Premier League by 6 to 8 points.
You think that the psyche has been so damaged right now, where this is tortoise and the hare, and the hare was sleeping, hare being Arsenal was sleeping, and now they get up and they look and say, oh, wait a second, I thought I had it made, and now there's going to be problems?
Yeah, and not just that. City are just a better team, and they underperformed the first half of the season. I think they're going to click now down the stretch and win games at a pace that Arsenal are not going to be able to keep up with.
Wow. All right.
You don't see it that way?
No, I mean, yeah, it certainly can happen. Again, ill-gotten gains, maybe, but they will celebrate regardless of how it ultimately comes to them. I just think that it is kind of, because I don't have a horse in the race, it is kind of funny from an Arsenal perspective that it was there. It was in the palm of your hand. And you were constantly, unlike the tortoise and the hare, you were constantly looking over the shoulder. And sometimes you will it into existence. And they seem to have, what they were so scared of happening has now manifested. It is happening to them right now, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And according to you, not only are they going to blow by, but they're going to put space between them. And it's always going to be in 2022-23, what could have been, what was once in the palm of your hand was taken out by those bad guys from Manchester City.
So the fixtures this weekend, Arsenal away to Aston Villa, Manchester City away to Nottingham Forest. Elsewhere, Chelsea hosts Southampton. This was a game Sean Sullivan put on the list when we thought it was going to be Jesse Marsch's debut, but it will not be. Leeds away to Everton. Leeds still without a new manager. Everton made the change recently. They have Sean Dyche on the bench, so we'll see what McKinney, Adams, Aronson and company can do in that one. And Chris Armas. Manchester United, Leicester. United, by the way, I forgot to mention this in the opening segment. Big game on Thursday. They're away to Barcelona in the Europa League, so this is a busy few days here for them. Home to Leicester at the weekend. Newcastle home to Liverpool. So a lot of good stuff.
Lots of good games. But I don't have to care about Southampton. So, that's one less team that I have to worry about.
For about a day there on Twitter, you were...
But you understand what I'm saying, right? The only reason that I would have watched a Southampton game other than just flicking through was if Jesse Marsch was at the helm.
If Jesse had taken over and Southampton faced Leeds and the three Americans were starting, who would you root for in that game?
I don't care. I root for America.
In Germany, Bayern Munich with a tricky away fixture. They face Borussia Mönchengladbach, Joe Scally and company, taking on the league leaders. And the two teams directly below Bayern have very easy matches this weekend. Union Berlin home to last place Schalke, Borussia Dortmund home to Hertha Berlin. So those two will probably win. So that puts a little bit of pressure on Bayern to take
Rested
care of their
Gio
business.
Reyna, so he can...
Rested Gio Reyna. PSG in France will play host to Lille. That'll be an emotional return to the Parc des Princes for Lille left back Timmy Weah. That's the position he's been starting in for them. PSG have lost 3 straight in all competitions, so they're looking to get back in there.
They got to get back in their winning ways. Okay.
In Spain, we had a match today. Real Madrid, because they played in the Club World Cup, they didn't play in La Liga last weekend, so they had to make up that match midweek. They took care of last place Elche 4-0. Vinicius was suspended, so Rodrigo got to start on the left and was sensational. Benzema twice from the penalty spot. Asensio with a great goal. Luka Modric scored as well. So Real Madrid taking care of business against last place Elche. That cuts the gap back down to 8 between them and Barcelona. This weekend, Real Madrid away to Osasuna. Barcelona home to Cadiz.
You can dress it up all you want, but I'm not...
You don't think there's much of a race there? But the big story in Spain that's erupted in the last 24 hours is this controversy surrounding Barcelona. Under their previous president, Bartomeu, it must be said, they've been found to have paid large sums of money to this company that's owned by a guy who was one of the head of La Liga refereeing, a Howard Webb type figure. And so everybody's putting two and two together and thinking these were payments that led to them getting beneficial officiating. So big controversy.
But Howard Webb is not involved, right? I mean,
no. I'm just saying an example.
Howard, if you're listening, okay, we're doing it. We're just using you. And actually, it was a form of respect in how big and important this person was. Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, the Madrid media is treating this like Watergate, and they think Barcelona should have points deducted or perhaps even be relegated. Barcelona are denying any wrongdoing. So this is a story we'll have to keep an eye on here and see what happens.
So the strategy in today's world is, if and when the distance between you and your major rival gets insurmountable, then go find dirt and figure it out. And they all have dirt somewhere, and try to get point deductions to make up the space as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah, between Juventus, City, and Barcelona, some of Europe's biggest clubs embroiled in controversy this season.
Wait, so explain to me again what they're being accused of, though?
So they've found Barcelona for a period of a few years there to have made these payments to this company, which is owned by a guy who also at the time was working as part of La Liga's refereeing, like sort of overseeing it.
So a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
All right. But it comes back to money. All right. Well, we'll see ultimately if that happens. Maybe ill-gotten gains again when it comes to Barcelona. They put them back too. And there's more Barcelona news, though, on the field, I guess, in terms of a transfer that didn't happen but did happen, evidently.
Yes. So this was an interesting one because you might recall on deadline day, they tried to sign Julian Araujo, and they were 18 seconds late with the paperwork. They appealed to FIFA. FIFA denied the appeal, so this transfer was considered dead, but Barcelona said, we're going to try to figure out some way to still make it happen, and evidently they have. I'm not quite sure how, to be honest. None of the articles really laid out how they were able to do this, but they just said, hey, it's done. So this move got the Fabrizio Romano here we go treatment today. Julian Araujo of the Galaxy is off to Barcelona. For the remainder of the season, he's going to play for their reserve team, which ironically enough is managed by Rafa Marquez. So young Mexican international playing for legendary Mexican international. And then the hope is that if he impresses next season, he could be part of the first team. Remember, Serginho Dest on loan with AC Milan. They've already indicated they're probably not going to sign him permanently. So Serginho Dest might be back at Barcelona this summer, competing with Julian Araujo, a U.S.-Mexico battle for a roster spot.
Oh, my goodness.
With the Blaugrana.
Well, so 18 seconds, right? I mean, it was just like a pity thing where they said, we kind of got the kids' hopes up and really dashed it. It really wasn't nice. So we'll just kind of forget that there was 18 seconds. But you can't be a little pregnant. It either there's no point in having a drop-dead date or moment if you don't adhere to it ultimately. Let
me ask you, taking your MLS blinders off.
Right.
Julian Araujo, is he a Barcelona caliber player?
Okay, so we're burying the lead, aren't we? MLS, in this case, the Los Angeles Galaxy, just sold a player to Barcelona. I mean, wow, that's awesome. Okay. Is he the best player in MLS? No. Is he the best player for the LA Galaxy? Debatable, but the LA Galaxy has not been good, and he's certainly a quality player that the Galaxy recognized, that the U.S. national team has recognized, and certainly El Tri has recognized going forward. But is he of the quality for Barcelona? And they might be taking a flyer and saying, hey, we think he's going to get better and better and better. But this is good. This is wonderful. I'm glad that it worked out for him, however it ultimately happened, because can you imagine having in the palm of your hand the transfer to Barcelona, a life-changing and altering type of moment, grabbed away and taken away and snatched away? So that's nice. It's a good story, and it's a good story for him, and it's a good story for Major League Soccer and for the Los Angeles Galaxy. And look, the Galaxy need it as they get set for this new year, because there's not been a whole lot of good stuff going on. Although, did you see? This is just it has nothing to do necessarily with Barcelona, but 70,000 plus tickets are sold for the LA Galaxy versus LAFC at the Rose Bowl, kicking off the MLS. And we're going to do a bunch of MLS preview next week and stuff like that. So we'll be talking a lot about that. But don't tell me that either of these teams or this league isn't popular. That's 70,000 people going to the Rose Bowl to watch an MLS game.
And guess who will be among those 70,000? Statman David Mosse.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's going to be fun. Good luck getting in and out of Pasadena. That's awesome.
Last thing on this transfer, I wonder if Ricky Puig might have recommended Araujo.
Ooh, gave his blessing over there as he continues on. Anything else, Mosse?
Just to wrap things up, Serie A on Friday, league leaders Napoli away to Sassuolo. Napoli looking to continue cruising towards their first Scudetto since 1990.
Just take it. Let's give it to him now. All right. All right. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi out there on all the social media platforms. Again, our handle out there on all the social media platforms is SOTU with Alexi, or you can call in at 657-549-2297. That is our State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297. What do we got this week, Mosse?
Couple of voicemails. Let's hear the first one right now.
Hey, Alexi. Hey, Mosse. This is Carlos from Corte Madera, California. And I'm just calling in with all the talk about the FIFA Club World Cup. I actually recently saw a great video essay by the great YouTuber Anthony La Rosa that did a piece on the 2000 Galaxy team you were a part of, Alexi, and how that competition was ultimately canceled. You guys didn't get paid the money FIFA promised to pay you due to their bankruptcy at the time, or that International Leisure, whatever that organization was. So I just wanted to know, Alexi, what's your thoughts and feelings, now 20 years on from that moment? How do you feel about it? How did some of your teammates feel about it? And, is it kind of a regret for you? Thanks again. I love the show. Can't wait to hear your response. Bye.
All right. Carlos, thank you for the throwback question. So, yeah, when we just finished talking about the Club World Cup, and by the way, we had talked last couple of pods about the future Club World Cups. Looks like next year it's going to be the same as this year, and then the following one is going to be the more expanded one, right?
There's going to be two more under this current format and the expanded one. And they announced that this upcoming one, 2023, is going to be in Saudi Arabia from December 12th to the 22nd. Then there's going to be another one in 2024 under this current format. And then they're hoping to start this expanded one in 2025, 32 teams. And they announced actually the disbursement of slots. It's going to be 12 from Europe, 6 from CONMEBOL, and then 4 each for CONCACAF, Africa, and Asia. 1 from Oceania and 1 for the host nation. Okay. So that's how that tournament's going to work.
All right. So, this tournament has gone through different iterations over the years. And as you rightly mentioned there, Carlos, so when people say that, the Seattle Sounders are the first MLS team to be champions of CONCACAF, that's actually not true. Both the Los Angeles Galaxy and DC United back at the turn of the century were champions of CONCACAF. Now, back then, in order to be champions of CONCACAF, it was a very different type of tournament relative to CONCACAF Champions League. It was even called the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It was all done within a 2-week type of tournament. And ultimately, if you won, you represented CONCACAF. So, in what would have been December of 2000, I hooked up with the Los Angeles Galaxy after taking a year sabbatical, and the first thing that happened was this Champions Cup for CONCACAF. I was not scheduled to play. I was coming off of a year where I had not done pretty much anything. Ziggy Schmidt said, this guy can play soccer, and he's a really good backup to have. Danny Califf, who was the starting center back for the Los Angeles Galaxy at that time, went out before the tournament on a surfboard and messed himself up. And immediately I got the call and ended up starting throughout that entire tournament, which we ended up winning. When you win that, you go to the Club World Cup, and we were very excited. In the same way, nothing has changed in that we were excited for the opportunity to play against the likes of Real Madrid. And Real Madrid was actually in this tournament. Now, this was 12 different teams that were then going to be a part of the Club World Cup. I have them right here in front of me, just so you get an idea of the competition back then. Three groups of 4. Deportivo La Coruña, Real Madrid, Galatasaray, Boca Juniors, Palmeiras, Los Angeles Galaxy, Olympia de Paraguay, right? Of Honduras, Olympia Honduras. Hearts of Oak from Ghana. Let's see, Zamalek from Egypt. Al Hilal, still crushing it back then. We just talked about them from Saudi Arabia. Jubilo Iwata from Japan. And the Wollongong Wolves from Australia. And there were 3 groups of 4, our group actually included Real Madrid. So it wasn't like Seattle this year where they had to win and then they were possibly going to play against Real Madrid. We knew going to the World Cup, or going to the Club World Cup, that we were going to play against Real Madrid. Unfortunately, this was going to be the second FIFA Club World Cup. They had some marketing problems when it came to FIFA with their marketing partner, and it ended up getting canceled. Not only do we miss out on the opportunity to play against some great teams in a tournament and represent CONCACAF and represent Major League Soccer, but there was also prize money. I vividly remember saying, hey, there's a huge $1 million pot possibly when you go over there that you are playing for. And that mattered. It matters now, and it mattered back then. And so, yeah, it was a bummer, to say the least, that we were not going to be able to go to that final moment and earn what we had worked so hard for, even in a short period of time, to represent the Los Angeles Galaxy and represent Major League Soccer. So yeah, it sucks, and I think about that, and I was proud, but I was also a little bit jealous when Seattle was able to go over there. And even though it was a short stay and they lost their first game, they still at least got the opportunity to say that they played in a Club World Cup, as opposed to us where we qualified, but then it was ultimately canceled. But I've gotten over it. It's been more than 20 years.
If you had faced Deportivo La Coruña, they had a player, Djalminha, who would have made you look silly.
Really?
Nutmegged you several times.
Listen.
Deportivo La Coruña in the 90s and early 2000s was a very popular destination for Brazilian players. Mauro Silva played there, Bebeto, Rivaldo, Djalminha, Flavio Conceição, among others. So,
hey, listen, we were not too shabby back then with the likes of Kevin Elgato, Hartman in goal, myself, Tyrone Marshall, Danny Califf, who I mentioned, Sasha Victorine, Kobe Jones, Peter Vallanas, the great Mauricio Cienfuegos, Simon Elliott, Ezra Hendrickson, of course, up top, guys like Kobe Jones and Carlos Ruiz.
Did you say Greg Vanny?
Greg Vanny was still a part of that team too, so yeah.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, it's the marketing firm you mentioned. It's ISL, International Sport and Leisure, and if you watch the Netflix FIFA documentary that came out recently right before the World Cup, there's a whole episode devoted to that company's relationship with FIFA. So, yeah, it was their collapse. It
was a mess.
It was actually called the Club World Championship in those days. The first edition, as you mentioned, was in Brazil in 2000. Manchester United famously blew off the FA Cup to play in that competition instead, which was very controversial. Ended up being an all-Brazilian final, Corinthians against Vasco da Gama. And, yeah, the one you were going to play in was going to be the second edition. The competition went away for several years and then resurfaced in 2005 under this current format that we now know.
Well, listen, I mean, it's one thing to be denied the opportunity to play against a team like Real Madrid. It's another thing to be denied against an opportunity to play against the Wollongong Wolves. So, oh well, another loss.
We have another voicemail.
Hey, guys, this is Ant-Man calling from Knoxville, Tennessee. Got a, I think, simple question. Given that the USMNT is leaderless at the moment, the USSF appears to be in shambles, what, in your opinion, let me rephrase, in your opinions, should the name Jill Ellis be in discussion? Why or why not? Thanks. Love the show. Bye.
I love the pauses for dramatic effect on that call.
Very theatrical. I love it, though. I love it. Thank you, Ant-Man. And thank you for the question. I think it's an interesting question. And so you have to look at it in a bunch of different ways. So just purely on the surface of it, from a resume and a success standpoint, Jill Ellis has more than, let's be honest, the majority of candidates out there and the majority of coaches that are going to come in and interview for the men's national team coaching position. Multiple World Cups, win streaks, coaching some of the best players, not only in the world at the time, but ultimately that have ever played the game. An understanding of the ins and outs of American soccer, a longevity when it comes to what she has done, both in the coaching perspective and even now off the field. And so getting that type of perspective, which I think opens up your eyes and your mind even more so. The question really comes down to, and this is always going to be the question when you're talking about Jill Ellis, is can a woman coach the U.S. men's national team. Now, it's easy for me to say yes, and I do believe that is the case. But ultimately, what you're going to have to decide is when, in this case, Jill Ellis walks into that room as the head coach, she is also walking in as a woman. Undeniable. It's just the way that it is in terms of the way that she is going to be viewed by the players. And I would think that some of the players, it's not going to faze them. They're not going to care at all. And they will just say, all right, what are we doing? What do you want us to do? And there will be some that will say, all right, this is a wait and see type of attitude. I'm not quite sure about this. And there will probably be some that say, no, this is not happening. So, because for all of your accolades and all of your experience, they are going to look at it as this is somebody who, while she has played soccer, while she has coached soccer, while she certainly knows soccer, she does not know men's soccer. And that's not an indictment. That is not a criticism. That is, let's be honest, that's a human type of reaction. Not every human, but a human type of reaction that is going to happen. I would love to see someone like Jill Ellis, and you mentioned Jill Ellis, so I would love to see Jill Ellis put her name in, and I would love to see her, because this is going to be a process. All right, if we know anything, the process is going to be thorough relative to what has happened in the past, and I would love to see her go through the process. And although we wouldn't be privy to it, it would be really interesting to see how she sees the U.S. men's national team, how she thinks that she would not just coach it from a regular perspective, but also coach it knowing that some players are going to accept it, some players aren't going to accept it. And that baggage, whether it's right or not, I think she'd be the first to admit, that baggage of coming into the locker room as not just a female coach, but the first female coach ever for the U.S. men's national team. I'd have to go through and look through history. I think she would be setting historic precedent on a number of different ways going forward. And then it would be up to her to prove that she knows what she's talking about and to earn that respect. Now, is that fair? Should she not get the respect immediately when she walks in? Yeah. But we all know that that's not necessarily how humans work. In the same way, though, that we all have baggage. I have it. You have it. We have our histories. We have our biases. Some of it is good. Some of it is bad. Some of it is burdensome. Even Greg Berhalter right now, through no fault of his own, he is going to be bringing baggage to the assessment as to whether he is the best candidate going forward, and every job that he goes through going forward. Jill Ellis is going to be bringing, I'm going to call it baggage, but it's just the reality of her being a woman in a position that has always had a man in it. And how is that going to translate? Ultimately, this is about winning. And I don't give a goddamn if it's a man, woman, or anything else. I just want somebody in there that the players are going to respect, that the players are going to respond to, that the American soccer community and the American community out there is going to respond to, that can go out there and not only coach the team, but also be that ambassador that you need to be. And Jill Ellis, as far as I'm concerned, could do all of those things. And if and when that process happened, I would hope that after you put all of the things together and look at all the pluses and minuses out there and what checks the box, what doesn't check the box, if you came to the conclusion that the best course of action for the U.S. men's national team was to get someone like Jill Ellis, and she was the best candidate for the job, that she would get it. And I try to put myself in that locker room when a Jill Ellis would walk in. And I would probably be skeptical at first. And, she would probably have to act in a way that gained my, it's not respect, because I would always respect somebody, but I guess gain my trust or gain my faith that what she was saying is based on her experience, but still applies to the situation that's going on. And let's be honest, it's a very different thing, coaching relative to playing. So the X's and O's in the game, they don't change relative to whether it's the men's game or the women's game. Yes, the speed and the size and the power and the strength is undeniable that it's different. But the tactics and the motivation that goes into motivating not just soccer players, but athletes in general, it's pretty universal. And so from that perspective, I think it would be much more difficult if you were coming at it as a player as opposed to coming into a coach being asked to coach as a woman being asked to coach a men's team. What do you think, Mosse?
Tricky one.
Yeah.
You want to say the politically correct thing here, but I don't want to be naive. It would be a bit strange for the players to have who have never been coached by a woman before to be coached by one. So it's something that has to.
And the federation, they might come to the realization and the decision, say, you know what, it's just too much, and we don't want to have to deal with it. And you know what? While there will be those that say, well, that's ridiculous, shouldn't happen. Again, that's the reality. Because guess what? They may come to the realization that Greg Berhalter it's just too much, and I don't want to have to deal with it. And in a moment where we should be focusing on so many other things, I don't want to have to worry about that. Because if and when you hire Jill Ellis or any woman to coach the U.S. men's national team, recognize that with that comes attention, with that comes scrutiny, with that comes stuff that we've never had to deal with before. And it's not just the coach that's dealing with it, it's the entire team. And who knows, maybe it brings them together, but unfortunately, it could possibly splinter them apart, and you might be left with players saying, why are we even talking about this? Why do I care about this? Why is this what the national team is when it should be something else?
To end on a happy note, if Jill...
It's not a sad note.
Just to end with a bit of news that should have been in this rundown, Sean Sullivan not including it as a fireable offense. FIFA have confirmed the United States, Mexico, and Canada automatically qualified for the 2026 World Cup. So if Joe Ellis or anybody else takes over the U.S. national team, they will already know that they are in the next World Cup.
They are in the next World Cup. Well, thank goodness that is happening. We knew that was going to happen. The good part from a CONCACAF perspective means obviously the U.S., Canada, and Mexico qualify automatically, and there's a good chance that 3 others are going to qualify out of CONCACAF, which means that there are some teams that potentially have never been to a World Cup from CONCACAF that will have their opportunity come 2026. Wouldn't that be something to see after, seeing the teams like Panama going for the first time in these types of things? So that's really what an expanded World Cup promises. So hopefully it delivers, and we see some debutantes going forward, as we are seeing this summer when it comes to the Women's World Cup, expanded Women's World Cup, and some debutantes that are going to be there. All right, anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, one more break here. When we come back, I'll give you my one for the road. Okay, welcome back. It's the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. All right, Mosse, I'm going to tell you a little story and break a little bit of personal news. Okay, so I retired at the end of 2003. We were just talking about the Galaxy. I was with the Galaxy. I finished playing in 2003 and then started up in front offices in the beginning of 2004. From the moment that I retired, I continued to work out in the form of running long distance. And basically for the next, 18 years or so, until I was about 51, I ran every single day. I ran outside, I ran on pavement, and I ran long distance. So it could vary from 7 miles a day up to 15 miles a day. And it was a wonderful escape, a wonderful release. Some of my best memories of life at times are runs. I forget a lot of things, but I can tell you where I was, and I remember running in Paris. I can remember running, through the Kremlin. I can remember running the Copacabana. I've run all over the world, and it's something that I love to do. A couple years ago, I went from my normal run. I came back home, and about 100 yards away from my doorstep, my right knee gave out on me. in a way that I had never felt pain before. I mean, I always had aches and pains and stuff like that. And I was very fortunate through my career where I didn't get a lot of injuries. The only thing I had was a broken fifth metatarsal that I have a screw in. But that was basically, I was pretty unscathed from the injury perspective, unlike my friend Stu Holden. But anyway, so I limped home, and it became very apparent that something was wrong. Now, my doctor in my yearly visits would constantly say, hey, listen, you can keep doing this in terms of running every day, but eventually it's going to catch up with you when you're just pounding and pounding away on pavement. And I would say, yeah, whatever, doc, and stuff like that. Well, doctors aren't always right, but in this case, he was certainly right. And it did catch up to me. And so for the last couple of years, I have not been able to run. I'm killing the Peloton, and so I'm still working out like a fiend. But I have not been able to run because of the pain in my knee. And so we tried everything, and this is what happens when you get old. Getting old sucks, Mosse. And I am older. I am not old, but I am older. But even getting older sucks, especially for someone that has used their body for so many years of their lifetime. So I went and saw my doctor, and we had exhausted all the possible treatments, including, first just shooting it up and then doing the plasma thing and, all sorts of different things in order to try to figure out a way. But you're really just masking it. And ultimately, when the cartilage goes and you have no shock absorbers, it's not there anymore. So I come to find out, Mosse, that I am going to have to get a knee replacement surgery. Now, this is partial knee replacement. Okay? And so that's going to happen in a couple weeks here. Now, in the greater scheme of things, this is nothing. There are people that have, horrible problems. If you're not watching, what we just put up here is my actual right and left knee, a compare and contrast. And basically, the space in between there, Mosse, you want some space, and you have some space when you are younger, and it just starts to diminish and starts to rub. And when people talk about bone on bone, it's really not always bone on bone. It's just the space is diminishing, and therefore there's problems. And so they have to go in there, and they're going to make me bionic. They're going to put some metal in here in a couple of weeks. As I said, on March 13th, I'm going to go in for a partial knee replacement. It's nothing new. It's a very common surgery. I think I'm going to miss a couple of shows, but we'll bank some stuff, and I'll let you know how it goes. But these are the things that happen when you are a 52-year-old gentleman, and certainly somebody who has played sports over the years. And I am excited about it in the sense that, look, nobody likes to go under the knife. Nobody likes to get, go under anesthesia. But from a quality of life perspective, I'm excited to not have to hobble around. And, it was getting to the point where I'm limping all over the place. And it really was, like I said, affecting my quality of life. Now, this doesn't mean that I can get up when this is all done and run around and be as nothing before, but it is going to solve some of the problems. And I will, if people are interested, I'll take people through it as I get closer and closer. It's about an hour surgery. They have incredible robots now that do it all with the machines that they have. I'll have a nice scar, and they get you right up on your feet immediately, and they get you moving. I mentioned Stu Holden, who had like 15 surgeries or something like that. He actually has had this. He's much younger than me, so he's had it at a much earlier age. But I've talked to a bunch of different people and a bunch of soccer people that have actually already had this, and there's not a single one that said that they regret it, because it really got them back to a place where that quality of life was improved, and that's something that I want to do going forward. So, like I said, I'll let you know how it goes, but I might be missing some shows here coming up because I will be in pain and I'll be on some heavy meds, which might be awesome in terms of doing a show. So maybe we'll get me going when I'm all hopped up.
Frankly, given some of your takes sober, it'll be virtually indistinguishable.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so anyway, I'm going to be bionic. Anything before we go, Mosse?
That's it.
We got all sorts of stuff, like you mentioned, through the show to watch this weekend. So there's all sorts of soccer going on. It's really fun. And as we also mentioned, MLS is right around the corner. with the kickoff. I mean, you're 10 days away with the new season, so we will be doing next week some different previews and just giving you a top line type of preview of what's happening. Lots of teams, lots of new players. It is upon us, and it's going to be exciting. It's near and dear to me. It is La Cosa Nostra. It is our league, and going into this new frontier, if you will, when it comes to MLS, both on and off the field, leading up to 2026 and all sorts of stuff that's going on.
They put out the list of commentating teams, and I got a big kick out of it. It said Kevin Costigan, typo on the name. So I texted, have I been calling you by the wrong name all these years? But it was a typo. They fixed it later on in the day. Keith Costigan.
He should, it should go to, like his stage name. You get to change it. Everything is new here. All right. We will talk to you again next week here on the State of the Union. Keep downloading and subscribing and rating and doing all the different things that you do. Thanks to Carlos and Ant-Man for sending in their questions on the State of the Union podcast hotline. Again, 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. Mosse, myself, and my bum knee, we will talk to you again next week on the State of the Union. Until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.